All right. Good evening, guys. Back to extended range and deco procedures, the combined course. As we have been talking about, we're going to go through and do just a quick review of where we've been at and what we've been talking about to make sure we all understand and we're all the same sheet of music. I'm going to write down real quickly that I want to start at slide number 120. That keeps me on track. But congratulations on making it to day 4. I do feel that strongly we're probably going to need to step up and do one more night just to make sure we get everything. We've had a few absentees as well. But overall, through the process, we've had our presentations, and those have been going really well. And you guys are starting to get the idea of what I'm looking for in a presentation and honestly, how those apply to not only just building knowledge, but how they apply to everything, where we look for the objective of something, excuse me, the value of it, and the main points of it, or the outline what we're going to do, right? And so we talked about that in depth, and we understand now that that is probably 3/4 of a dive plan. So going through that, it definitely makes things a little easier. On night 1, we covered our pressures, talked about the golden rule, never hold your breath. We got into boil, and I started sneaking some equivalent narcotic depth in on you a little bit, right? To give you the idea that there is an equivalent narcotic depth. And you can definitely help predict performance on that. We continued through that process. We talked about some formulas. We're going to go over those formulas again tonight, by the way. We got into a little bit of Boyle's law, Henry's law as well. Henry's law being the law of how gas dissolves in a liquid and how agitation and cold affect that. So we got into that a little bit. We also talked about Dalton. Dalton is a good friend of ours because he helps us figure out 2 things. Bryce, what's one thing that we use Dalton's law to help us figure out? What do you think? What are 2 things, or what is one thing?
We use it to figure out the best mix for nitrox.
Exactly. And Dave, what's the other one? Best mix of nitrox, and what else? 2 very important things.
Best mix of nitrox, like you said, and then the other one is nitrogen. Seeing how much nitrogen we're going to be dealing with.
How about the depth?
Okay.
Alex, I'm looking for depth. What is the maximum operating depth? So good try. Thanks for playing. We'll go on to the higher depth around here in a minute for the daily double. After we got done with that, we talked about how the inert gas, diffuses out of our system and profuses into our system as well. So we got through that as well and got into that, some basic terminology. We talked about absolute pressure, partial pressure, the alveoli air. We talked about the desaturation and saturation model. We simplified finally the idea of half times a little bit for you as well. So I wanted to make sure we made that a little simpler. We looked at Bowman a little bit. Bowman is definitely, his algorithm is amazing. He's a genius. We talked about accelerated decompression and how changing from a back gas of 21% to something much higher changes that. Dustin, you and I went through the difference between just using a back gas of 21% and 40% affected a dive. How did that affect the dive when we did our one-on-one?
That cut your deco time down from, I think on one dive, it cut it by 45 minutes, just the deco stop itself.
Absolutely. So it things down quite a bit. I mean, a lot of times it'll keep you out of deco by using the best blend. Right. But if you do go into deco by using the right blend to start with, I mean, we took a 28-minute dive, or an hour and a half dive, I should say. We pulled it down to like 32 minutes, if I remember correctly. About right? Is that about right?
Yeah.
We're going to play with that a little bit as well. It's definitely interesting to look at and understand. We talked about decompression stops. So what a decompression stop actually looks like. So tonight we're actually I've got a little short video. I did a kind of a head-to-head of the 3 dive computers that I happen to own that are tech available. And I want you guys to see physically what it looks like on a dive computer. I think that's a big thing. And I've been out with enough divers at this point to know that that can be a stressful thing when you see it. Of my divers out there, who has seen their computer go to the magic world of deco?
I have not.
Yes.
Okay.
Nope.
Ivan, are you?
Yes, I have. I put it in lesser algorithm so I could force it into deco when I was running 2 computers in Cosmel to see how they work.
Gotcha. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And that's exactly the way to do it as well. And so one of the things I don't want you guys to do is just suddenly get a new computer and say, hey, I'm going to go do a deco dive. That is really, really, really a bad idea. So do follow Ivan's suggestion is have one that's not in it and then put the other one super conservative so you can see what it physically looks like. Because part of stress, and we learned this in kind of rescue class and stress and rescue, was unfamiliarity with gear, right? And that includes computers. Absolutely. So the more you can understand about how your computer works and what that looks like physically, the less stress it's going to cause you. So I encourage you, do this, practice it. Good news is I've got 3 computers on. We're going to show, and I'm going to show you exactly. It's not the greatest video for that. I'm going to reshoot the video this weekend, hopefully, and see if we can get a little bit better. I've got one of my dive guides out trying to build a better bracket. So see if we can come up with something a little bit better and a little sharper so we can really see what that is. I really like a good video of what deco looks like on a dive computer. I think that was definitely a good thing. A couple of us here know Ryan Lanta, and Ryan had never been into deco when I did his solo course. And I knew that, and I purposely took him to 1 minute to deco to where it was just getting ready to go to deco just to stress him out. And I promise you, he was at 100% stress. It was pretty cool. But I had control of the situation. We had plenty of gas. I know what we're doing. I just wanted to get him to stress because that's part of my fun thing with stress or solo diving is to get you to that point of stress. But anyway, we talked about that. And so we're going to look at that. And we talked to the idea is it's going to give you a ceiling. So you want to be just below the ceiling. If your ceiling is 20 feet, you need to be at 21 feet. And the biggest thing I can tell you about deco diving and technical diving is control. Absolutely. 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. The better your control is, the better you're going to be prepared for deco diving. Because in deco diving, it's easy. I tell you what, you throw twin sets on, you throw, a crap load of lead on, and you sink. Sinking in diving is not the hard part. I hope you all have figured that out, that going down is usually not the hard part. It's the coming back up, right? And getting that good hover so you don't crash into things. But with deco diving, you're going to start at that level, and you're going to come up to that 60 feet. For example, if that's your ceiling, to 61 foot, you're going to hover there, and you're going to stay there for 1 minute to 2 minutes. And then you're going to rise up to 51 feet. You're going to stay there. Then you're going to stay there for a couple minutes, right? So you just, all you're doing is literally hovering. You're not swimming around. Your feet aren't kicking. You're not doing crap, right? The goal is to relax and breathe normally. The less action you can do, the better off you're going to be. The less tired you're going to be, the less wore out, the less action. Really, the idea with deco stops is you really need to get good with liking who you are, because you're going to spend a lot of time with yourself in that mode. So in your deco stops, if you don't like who you are, you're in the wrong sport to start with. But you're going to need to make friends with your inner child and be able to come up with creative ways to entertain yourself, because a 35-minute deco stop is a long time. It gives you a lot of time. I mean, you get to think about, did I leave the stove on? Should I get a puppy? I mean, there's all kinds of great things that'll go through your mind, right? So this is about control, is getting to that point. And as we rise in the water column, now when we do Bear Lake, I've got some advantage there that we're doing shore dives. So we're going to come back up the shore. We're going to find a spot. If you need to, you can reach out and put a finger on the rock just to keep yourself in place, right? You've got a visual reference. But in your open ocean deco dives, the only reference you're going to have is a safety line. And that absolutely, running that safety line absolutely is a great thing to do. But what if you're not the guy that's launched the safety buoy? What if it's your buddy that was the one that lucked out? Because generally you run in pairs, right? Safety comes in pairs and butting up. Where's your buddy? He's right there. If he's the one that launched the SMB because he had the SMB or he got to it first, you're the one that gets to float and use him as a visual reference point. So you won't always have a safety line. In the photo they show here in the book, I don't like it, to be honest with you. I have never done this. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over and show it to you. Entire screen. As you can see, they've got 2 deco divers on a safety line, a spool, and they're one hanging on and the other hanging on. They're in horrible dive position. Do not be these guys. You want to get a nice dive position, nice and flat, relax. Get in that position, relax, and do nothing. You're going to stay in that position. You can hold, if you're the one with the safety line, it's great. If you're the one without the safety line, use it or use the other guy as a reference. But very rarely will you see a deco stop that'll look like this. So just be aware. Don't be that guy. Be the guy that doesn't need that as your safety line, right? So get used to doing nothing. So we talked about sealing. We talked about safety stops. We always make sure we do our safety stops. If you miss a safety stop, we talked about that. And we talked about, I like to reiterate the idea of body decompression. Don't be afraid to stay in the water for a while. Keep your head out. Talk to your buddies. If you're in the Caribbean, who cares, man? You're in the water. I promise you, doing a body deco for 10 minutes in the Caribbean is better than anything you're going to do this week at work. Bar none. So shut the hell up and just do your body deco, right? Just kidding. So that's what we talked about overall. And then we went through some takeaways of how to do a safety stop a little bit different. Take a little extra time. Do a safety stop. Stop at 20 feet for a minute. Come up to 10 feet for 4 minutes. Take the time and enjoy your safety stops overall. It's to your advantage to make sure you're doing those. So, and to make sure if you do miss a safety stop for less than a minute and less than 10 feet, go back and do the safety stop. If not, go up to the higher safety stop and finish out the entire run time at the next safety stop. Don't shorten your safety stops or don't shorten your deco stops at all. So if I have a 5 minute at 90 and I have a 5 minute at 80 and I'm supposed to leave the 90 foot at 100 minutes and I'm supposed to leave the 80 foot at 95 minutes. Well, stay and you miss it, go up and stay till the 95-minute runtime at the higher safety stops. Do the lower safety stop and the higher safety stop at the one that you're at now. So don't be afraid. And then spend a little extra time on a safety stop when you get done with the process as well. It's to your advantage. We want to get as much of that nitrogen out of your system as you can. And one of the good things is if you do have one of the cool new computers, let's see, this is the DSX. And there we go. Oh, it apparently was completely off. Came up with my picture. But as you can see on the new DSX over here on the right-hand side, it's got a gradient factor. It'll show you exactly where you're at in the gradient factor on those safety stops. So make sure you're in the green. Keep it below. If you're running a Garmin, or not a Garmin, but a Perdix, something like this, or a Shearwater, they should have the ability to put on there, you see over here, GF99 and GF Surface. Who knows what GF99 and GF Surface is other than David, who I explained to very detailed to this? Dustin, what's GF99?
I'm not sure. I would guess it would be the gradient factor related to your controlling tissue.
Yeah, exactly. That's where you're at in the gradient factor on your controlling tissue. It's exactly right. So what that's telling you is it'll, as you're descending, you'll notice it'll say on gassing or on gas. So you're on gassing, you're up gassing. As you start to ascend, it goes to your controlling tissue and it'll give you a percentage of where you're at currently in the gradient factor. What you'll see is as you start to rise in the water column is that number is going to go up. If it gets to the point where it hits your GF low, it's going to stop you. And then it's going to continue to the process till you get to your last deco stop. And it's going to make sure you're below your gradient factor before it lets you out of that last deco stop. The nice thing is, you stop and go ahead and do that safety stop that I'm telling you to do, extra 5 minutes, that gradient factor is going to go down 5 or 10% below your top gradient factor and let you out of the water with a little less nitrogen than what you initially anticipated. It's a good thing. The other one is GF Surf. Bryce, you want to take a guess on that? You're pretty mechanical.
Is that the gradient factor if you go straight to the surface?
That's exactly right. Good job. I'm impressed. If I were to go straight to the surface, it'll tell me exactly what my gradient factor would be at the surface. So some pretty cool things. Absolutely. You'll also know that notice all of them will have a partial pressure on there as well. Right over here. The Shearwater has that too. So just keep an eye on that and make sure you keep your partial pressures in safety mode as well. If you programmed your gas correctly, it'll keep you safe. So a couple quick, just kind of basic ideas. We jumped in some physiology of the diver, partial pressure oxygen. Ivan, what is partial pressure of oxygen do I die?
At 1.4.
I die at 1.4.
Oh, die. I thought you said dive. I'm sorry.
I die. I croak. I pass out and no longer live.
No longer live. Well, partial pressure is above 1.6 is where you start to have the issues. And if you stay there long enough,
What's the lowest one though? Where do I go to hypoxia?
what is it? 10? Is that what it is?
10%. 10% is I die. 12% I go unconscious. At 16% lethargy and reduced mental process. So I want to make sure we're keeping that partial pressure up. The nice thing is I mean, even if we were diving at 10,000 feet and the partial pressure of the oxygen we're breathing is 0.15, we start getting down, the partial pressure of oxygen will rise, right? So just so and then let's see, Dustin, what is the recommended maximum partial pressure for diving, for the active portion of diving?
For that 1.4 for the active part.
Exactly. At what point do I get to CNS toxicity?
1.6.
Exactly. Good job. Sounds like you guys are paying attention. All right. Dave.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh, what is one of the signs and symptoms of CNS oxygen toxicity?
Convulsions.
Okay. Bryce, give me another sign and symptom.
Visual loss.
Gotcha. Dustin?
Irritability.
What is it?
Irritability.
Irritability. That's a good
Attitude.
one. Absolutely. Twitching muscles, dizziness, all those are good signs and symptoms. So good job, guys. I like to make sure we're going over this. Ivan, what are a couple of things that will help induce or increase your chances of getting nitrogen narcosis?
Well, of course, depth, the actual nitrogen and the partial pressure of it, but also it's a big time mental factor. So how your anxiety and how you're handling it, your stresses, overall comfort, could be the cold, the dark.
Absolutely.
A multitude of factors, really.
Multitude of mental factors are huge. Absolutely. So this is what I teach in stress and rescue is the difference between you and most victims are the attitude that you take with you, right? Same thing with this. If you take an attitude that you're going to die, you're probably going to die. You know, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're absolutely right? I think that's what Yoda said. So a lot of it's mental process. Dustin, what's another way that that will increase our chances of getting nitrogen narcosis?
NARC. That would be when your partial pressure of nitrogen.
Sure. Other than depth, I mean, the obvious is we go past 60 feet. It starts
Right.
getting higher chances at 100. All that. Past that, what are some things that in diving that I might do that might increase my chances of getting nitrogen narcosis?
How healthy are you? What are your habits? Eating habits? Did you sleep?
Sleep. Absolutely.
How did you show up at the dive site? Prepared and ready? Are you tired?
Absolutely. So another thing that we're looking for as well is cold. If you're diving cold, you increase your chances of getting nitrogen narcosis. You slow the firing of the neurons and all that. Other things, fast descent. What it does, it creates an overall feeling of disorientation because you're going very quickly. So take your time on your descent. There's no hurry. The ocean bottom is not going away. Apparently, the only thing that goes away is iceberg caves. So just saying. So take your time. This is a sport about learning to do nothing. Overall, who is going to try and do my fancy dancy, slickery dickery saccharate calculation this coming week?
I've already done it.
Awesome. And how'd you fare?
Well, I did all right. Of course, I didn't go metric. But I did it about a week and a half ago, drooling on my couch. So it's a little bit different to breathe through the second stage while not in water.
It is. Absolutely. You deal with the pressure, but we still have to get the baseline idea. So I want to encourage you guys to take a regulator out, put a mask on, and breathe for 20 minutes on your couch. And then change it over to metric so you can get your liters per minute. It's really not terribly complicated. And again, I can you guys already should have the calculation in that BS form that I sent you, but sit down and do that, because we can add in all the rest of the factors, Ivan. But the challenge is it's a surface air consumption, so surface, and we have to figure out what is our general lung capacity is really what we're figuring out, right? How do we breathe and what does that look like? Once we get the baseline of what is unique for us, we can add in pressure and we can add in depth. And then we can add in work factor. And those are the three things we're gonna add. Well, two things: depth and pressure, and work factor. So when we add those two things in, we should get a fairly accurate idea of what our actual SAC rate is. And so I definitely encourage you guys to do that and figure that out, what your actual SAC rate is. Anybody need me to put that on the screen so you can do a quick screenshot of it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let me find the right slide here. Let's see. Where did it go? Take me just a moment to apparently find it.
That's okay.
Let's see. Partial pressure. Here we go. And all right, we'll start with, Aaron's here. There we go. We'll just add Aaron in. There we go. Okay, Aaron, we're still doing our review.
Okay.
And then we're going to go into some fun stuff here. All right. So here's the idea. Here's the calculation. So pull it down over here, and effort. So there we go. So it starts off with, if we use 500 PSI, multiply it by 0.06894 to get your bar. Figure out your tank size, 11 times, or your tank size times your bar equals your total liters used. Divide your liters used by the number of minutes, and that gives you your actual SAC rate. That's what we're looking for. So in this case, we used 500 PSI, multiplied it by 0.06894. It gave us 34.47 bar. We had 11 liter tank in this case. We multiplied 11 liters by 34 point. We got that 397. Just divide out. Solve for X is what my teacher would say. So overall, and then just understanding, if I'm going to do a dive, I just need to make sure I'm multiplying by the correct effort. And then finally, I just need to figure out my depth. So here's the final calculation. So light effort, no current, 117, 66 feet seawater, 3 atmospheres, SAC rate is 14 liters per minute. Here's how we got there. 117 or 15 liter tanks is at 3,000 PSI is 0.0694 equals 206 bar. 206 bar times 15 liters is 3,090 liters. That gives us 2,060 liters of usable gas. Now, 14 liters per minute at a light effort of 1.5 equals 21 liters per minute. 3 atmospheres are 66 feet times that 21 liters per minute equals 63 liters per minute. Our usable gas in that tank is 2,000 divided by 63 equals 33 minute dive time.
Sweet. Thank you.
Easy enough. And just know that 15 liters is a fairly high SAC rate, but I'd rather you guys start high and go low than start low and run out of gas and die. So dying is bad. I encourage you guys not to die. It's not my favorite thing to see happen for you guys. So if you guys wouldn't mind, don't die on my shift. Die on somebody else's shift. Just kidding. Don't die at all. I want to see you guys make it back. So easy enough. So we talked about that. We talked about gear requirements. And we did some presentations as well. Let's see. Good news is we're going to go through that again. I want to go back to slide 104. Bam. All righty. Was it? Oh, I'm sorry, 120. I'm glad I wrote that down because I would have. There we go. All right. Ivan should be ready to do his presentation, and Aaron should already gave his presentation. Who's left? Ivan, or it's going to be Ivan and Donnie, or Dustin, I mean, and Donnie, if Donnie ever shows up.
Yep.
Who's your buddy, Aaron?
What's that?
Who's your buddy? He says he's at a fire meeting, and you're out there, so what the hell?
He's on Chubbuck Fire. I'm with Blackfoot. I'm actually sitting in a hotel in Boise, so I don't
Oh,
know.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
If you'll run over and see some of my dealers for me and tell them everything is good, that you'll save me a trip next week.
Sure. $1,000 an hour, I'll do anything you want.
There you go. Fantastic. Sounds like a deal. All right. Ivan, are you about ready?
I think so. We can give it a go. See how it is. I have a PowerPoint here, so I'll need to share my screen.
Absolutely. Whenever you're ready, I'll pop it on for us.
Okay, let's see how this works here.
Are you guys liking the Jeopardy music?
Can't really hear it.
Okay, can you guys see anything yet?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just one more moment here, please, if you don't mind. Okay, so gradient factors, conservatism, and the M value. So we're going to play a little imagination game here and imagine that you have a new dive computer with adjustable settings that you can mess with, but you don't know what to do. So while getting ready for a shallow shore dive, someone suggested that you just pick a number that's halfway between these options because they didn't know either. So you're like, why not? You dial in 50-50 and you go dive. It was a great hour-long dive at around 30 feet. You saw lots of things. It was so enjoyable that you go hop on a boat with Kamana divers to get out on your first wreck. You decide on the YO257 and the shallower San Pedro since it's a 2-for-1 wreck diving day. And you know the YO sits at 80 to 110 feet. So you go out there, you jump off the boat on your first dive, you start your dive, and the ship looks beautiful. But all of a sudden, your computer warns you just after a few minutes of the dive that you have reached your NDL and you must head up. So you look over and you tell your dive master that you're at your NDL. And he looks at you with a curious and slightly smirking look and then proceeds to wave bye. Everyone else comes up about 25 to 30 minutes later after continuing from the YO over to the San Pedro, which is much shallower. And when they get back, you have no idea what's going on, how they're able to stay down for so much time, and what is going on with your computer. So the objective of this is to explore gradient factors and understand what the numbers do. What you're going to learn about is dive conservatism, gradient factors and what they are, what the M value is, and how it directly relates to gradient factors. What GF low and GF high are. Excuse my dogs for a second. My wife's getting home. So just let me pause my time if you would, because this shouldn't count. Let me move into the next room. So just 1 second here. We have too many dogs here. Okay, so what GF low and GF high are and what they do. So dive conservatism. Why might we need to dive more conservative? Aaron, do you have an idea?
So that we have a margin of safety in case we stay longer or go deeper.
That's right. Definitely good reasons for it. And also, everybody is different and to be safer as an individual. So things to keep in mind and consider when diving, and that might affect you, are fitness, age. We're not all as young as we used to be. Our health. We can get some colds or other ailments that might affect our diving. What you did last night. This is a big one. It can have a great impact on the diving the next day. Did you stay up late? How well did you sleep? Did you drink? What did you do? And then of the morning of the dive, if you're stressed, do you have anxiety? What's going on? or do you feel good? These are all things that can affect our diving, and we should think about what to do when we're feeling these ways. So, gradient factors are effectively user adjustable conservative settings. Gradient factors define the amount of inert gas supersaturation in leading tissue compartments, which are not always necessarily the fastest. They are dynamic values used in dive planning to control nitrogen absorption and release. They help us tailor our ascent profiles to minimize the risk of decompression sickness and to allow us to customize our own conservative settings. They work with a mathematical decompression model developed by Albert Bullman, and many dive computers now use the Bullman ZHL16C, and it can be modified with these gradient factors. Now, before we dive in a little too deep, it should be noted that different manufacturers can have slightly different calculations or slightly different differences in the tissue compartments, which can change how they can apply. You could have two computers with identical settings, and one might say your deco obligation is slightly more than the other. Or it could be your NDL. One says you have slightly more time, and the other one is saying you're right at the rock bottom. There are slight variations, and something to be aware of. So now let's get into the conservatism, diving in the numbers. The first thing about it is to select more conservative number, is that if you select more conservative numbers for a recreational diver, it is equal to a shorter overall dive time. To select a higher conservative setting, like for a tech diver, it is equal to a longer deco. Or basically, a rec diver who selects a more conservative setting, he'll leave the water sooner, and a tech diver will stay in the water longer for more decompression. So some divers did not want the same conservatism factor throughout the ascent. And this led to two values, the GF low and the GF high. These values represent percentages of the allowable tissue saturation limits. The gradient factors currently change the model conservatism in those two ways. The two numbers that I just spoke about describe the gradient factor, the GF low and the GF high. And they can be in a range of numbers such as 3575 or 3085. These are common middle ground numbers, but both can change up or down. These numbers are effectively percentages and alter the math and change the diver's decompression profile. The first number, seen right here, generates the depth of the first stop, which is the deepest stop. The second number is the overall conservatism factor, or the surfacing inert gas supersaturation level. Both numbers directly relate to the M value. The M value, or maximum value, is the critical supersaturation limit of the leading tissue compartment in the Bullman decompression algorithm. It's the edge that a given tissue can theoretically tolerate during an ascent before you might have negative consequences. In short, it represents the change in supersaturation of the tissues and varies by compartment as the compartments on and off gas at different rates and vary on what the hypothetical tissue compartments can tolerate. Basically, maximum amount of overpressure before Bullman thought that you might get bent. As more DCS happens above this line, than divers have happen below the line. So then we have the gradient factors. And here again, I've chosen 30/85. The first number indicates how close you are to supersaturation, the M value, that you will be in the controlling tissue compartments before you begin your first decompression stop. The lower number creates a deeper stop to start your decompression at a lower percentage of the M value of the controlling tissue group. If you selected 100% for the GF low, you'd be theoretically at the supersaturation, or at the theoretical supersaturation limit. The second number, and as I have here, the 85, is again overall conservatism. If you choose 100% here, that means you would surface at 100% of the M value, and as such, there is no conservatism. So basically, not the most safe. Now, if you choose 85%, that means I would surface at 85% of the M value, which is equal to a 15% difference between the M value. Now, as I spoke of earlier, the 3075 or 3085 are defaults on some computers. So the 30% of the controlling tissue of the M value generates the first and deepest stop, and from there, the algorithm slowly moves upwards to the surface to surface you at 85% of the M value overall. Setting the GF to less than 100% sets longer shallow stops to reduce the supersaturation of the slower tissues at the end of the dive. So GF low and GF high, what they do, the short list, and it is quite the short list here, I believe. So we have GF low is used to determine the depth and duration of the first decompression stop. The GF high is used to determine how long you will stay at your last stop before you can exit at the inert gas loading, the percentages of the M value that you have set. The higher the GF low, the shallower your first decompression stop will be. The lower GF values, such as below 20, are for those who want to start want a deeper start to the deco stops. Higher GF low values, such as above 35, get divers off the bottom to reduce inert gas uptake in tissues that are not saturated. Low GF high values, such as below 70, limit the maximum decompression stress experienced and shorten the total dive time. High GF values, such as above 80, get the diver to the surface faster and give more dive time. Though the closer you get to the 100, the M value, the closer you are to that theoretical supersaturation limit. So, what did we learn? What is the M value? Bryce, what do you think?
That's the maximum value of the supersaturation limit in Bowman.
There you go. Good job. And gradient factors. What is this? Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, gradient factors is the extra conservatism you're adding to the computer that's tailored to yourself to help you stay away from the M value.
Awesome job there. Good job. And what are GF low and GF high? And what do they do? Dustin, you want to give that a go?
Sure. So gradient factor low, that's going to determine where your first stop is. And gradient factor high is going to determine how long you are at your last stop.
Excellent. Good job. And then again, why would we want to change our conservatism settings for a dive? We know Aaron's got this. So what do you say, Aaron?
So that we can give ourselves a safety margin depending on our body type, physical fitness, things that we've done during or after the dive, or during or before the dive.
Excellent. Well-informed answer. So continuing the education, you definitely could look into taking the science of diving if you haven't already. There's quite a bit of information there. You might also want to think about going towards Master Diver if you haven't been there. Dive Master, all good stuff. And we'll teach you a lot more about what we just went through. And that is it, guys.
I have a question for you.
What's that?
So you said that the 85 and the 30-85, that's what determines the length of your last stop. If you set that lower, does that mean your stop is longer, or if you set it higher, your stop is longer?
If you change, which number are you talking about here? The top number?
The high number.
So if you change that, if you lower it down, you potentially could stay longer, and you'd come up earlier. So it depends on what you're riding out there.
So let's clarify that for a minute there.
So you're gonna have less bottom time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And come up.
I guess that was my question. Is I know what the bottom number does, the GF low, the GF high.
The GF high is the maximum percentage or the conservative setting that you're taking from the M value. So you're just making it so you don't encroach so far on the, like if you go with the 75%, you're not encroaching so far on the 100%.
So if the GF high is less than 85, you'll have less bottom time.
You will definitely have less bottom time. Yes.
Ivan, let's
Yes.
clarify that. Let's clarify that for a moment. It doesn't really mean that you have less bottom time. What that means is it's going to give you a longer deco. So it's going to create a higher conservative factor. So if you take your GF high from an 85 to a 70, it means it's going to keep you at your deco stop until you clear to a 70% of the M value instead of 85. So it really doesn't affect the amount of bottom time at that point. What it does is
if we're discussing straight deco, that's correct. But if you take 75 down to 100 feet for 5 minutes and you don't intend to go to deco, then it does decrease the bottom time.
Sure.
But
If you're sitting outside of deco, we're talking in deco really is where you get into your gradient factors. Overall is really what we're looking for, because if you're running a pure gradient factor, it doesn't.
Well, I understand you can go there, but yeah, I mean, people run gradient factors every day doing rec dives and never hit deco, so it affects the outcomes of those dives.
Yeah, when we go to straight pure deco, when we stop using a predetermined gradient factor or predetermined conservative factor, we start moving into gradient factors. It works differently overall. The computer starts looking and saying, wait a minute, you're a big boy, you want to do your own big boy things, is what it's really saying, and it figures itself out from there. So it like I said, it affects the length of the last stop, but not really the amount of bottom time, but the amount of the time that you're gonna pay for being at the bottom. That's what they call decompression obligation. Is the longer you're down, the longer you're obligated to remain at a specific point.
Yes. Yeah. Again, if we're talking,
that was really my question: is if you move that number down, does it keep you at the deco longer? Is what I was trying to get at. And the answer is yes.
For deco, yes, it would.
Okay.
And for rec diving, not hitting the deco, it shortened the overall dive time.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, I like the term of decompression obligation. That's the full terminology for it. Is the longer you stay down, or the more conservative you put, the more you pay, the more you're obligated to pay and to the mistress of deco.
And a good example of this is Benjamin's dive plan. You could actually turn the gradient factors up to an 85-45, and we won't hit deco on any of the planned dives.
Exactly.
So it depends on what you're doing, what your plan is, and what you want to accomplish with these numbers.
Yeah, my overall goal is to get you guys into deco. Bonus points if you can tell me who invented the gradient factor.
That was oh gosh. Oh, I had that written down somewhere, but slipping my mind.
Because you said Bowman, but Bowman created the.
There was Robert Workman. Is that who was that did the original M value?
Workman did M value, but who did design and develop the gradient factor?
Yeah, it's my mind is vacant right now.
Eric Baker, very lesser known figure in diving math. So if you get a chance, look up Eric Baker sometime. He's a very lesser known. A couple of things I want to go through on this, just overall. I took some notes real quick. Good job, by the way. I think Ivan did a fantastic job. I would think he would have passed. Absolutely. What do you guys think? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Excellent.
Good job. Obviously, he's been practicing on his dive master, is what I'm guessing. It shows. It absolutely shows. So, latest research. Let's talk about latest research for a little bit. This comes from Dan, not from me. Latest research is really showing, and I think it makes more sense a little bit when you get into you look at the actual algorithm. And I'm going to share my screen for a moment. This is one of the reasons I disagree fervently with pile stops overall. So let's see. We added John back, by the way. Let's see. Overall, put this up. So the latest research that's coming out of Dan is that they're suggesting and encouraging to do a higher level of gradient factor low than what we've ever done in the past. When I first started tech diving, it was pretty common to see somebody use a 30 factor, 25, 30, 35 in their GF low. It was very common. But what they're discovering is that with using such an aggressive gradient factor for your gradient factor low, that is causing still a combination point where you're doing more on gassing than you're actually off gassing in your controlling tissue and moving the controlling tissue out to a different point. Now, as we look at this, kind of get an idea, we have the compartments, we have our halftime minutes. This is halftime minutes on this, and then we have version C, which is the current one we're on. And this is feet seawater. So as we look at this, we can see that we get down to 50 feet, 60 feet, 73 feet. If we set a super conservative gradient factor low, it's probably going to stop us at that 60 foot to 70 foot mark, maybe 50 foot. But as you can see really quickly, how many tissue compartments are off gassing and how many tissue compartments are still on gassing if we stopped our first safety stop at 70 feet or our first deco obligation at 70 feet. Literally 4 through 16 are still on gassing. We're only at 70 feet. We're only off gassing compartments 1, 1B, and 2. So latest research is suggesting that your beginning gradient factor should be no lower than 45. And typically they're encouraging in the 50 range. No higher than 50 is what they're encouraging. Now, my encouragement is 45 to 50. And when we start going out and doing real deco dives with me, absolutely, I'll pull out the decompression Doppler radar, and we'll actually run that on you and help you build a gradient factor based on you. Now, if you are coming out of the water and you're feeling slightly symptomatic, headaches, tiredness, joint aches, anything like that, the encouragement is to pull that high GF high down. I typically run 50-85 is pretty typical. When I get cold water, I'll pull that down to 50-80 or 50-75 to give myself a little bit more off gassing time as well. I generally don't have a problem because I do the extra safety stop as well. But as I start to get those bigger ones, I pull down the bigger number and pull myself. So I'm getting out of the water with less nitrogen as well. Because remember, at the end of the day, it really matters the second number more than the first number in that's what it's going to let you out of the water with. So that second number is huge. So as we look at this, and I think it's helpful to kind of get an idea of that, of understanding where the latest research is showing. And when you see the actual time and half times of the compartment, I think it makes a lot more sense overall. Because like I said, if we're at 70 feet for our point, look at how much we still have on gassing in our halftime mix. So it's quite a bit. So just be aware. It's definitely to your advantage to consider and do that. The other thing I wanted to kind of warn against is there was a little bit of talk about a reverse profile. Dan has come out, the latest research on reverse profiles is, yes, you can do them, but there's a huge but caveat here. If you are going to reverse profile, Dan has suggested that you do not reverse profile more than 20 feet at the outside for each subsequent dive. The problem with it is the modern dive computers utilizing the Bowman algorithm, when you do a reverse profile, don't have a way to correctly input the data. So if you do a 50-foot dive and then a 100-foot dive, the problem is the Bowman algorithm starts to go a little wonky and hasn't got the ability to correctly calculate as accurately as it would if you did a correct profile of deepest to shallowest. So just be aware of that. It's like statistics. Garbage in, garbage out. Same thing with that. So just be aware. Reverse profiling is generally bad. We will be reverse profiling, but we're going to make sure we stay within 20 feet of the previous depth. That's going to be a big factor. On day 2, because I still don't feel 100% comfortable with reverse profiling, I was thinking most likely day 2 we'll do our deepest dive first, because that will be our biggest or gas sucker anyway. So let's do the biggest dive first, the second biggest dive second, and then the shallowest dive third, because it'll give us a larger safety margin as well. And by day 2, we should have separated the wheat from the chaff and understand where everybody's at. So that's just a couple things I just kind of want to throw out there for you guys as well. Does that make sense, guys?
It does. Yes.
Good. I think you did a fantastic job at your presentation, and I'm guessing John has been coaching you through presentations. Would I be far off on that?
John has been an immense help with where I'd like to go. So he's been incredibly helpful.
I would guess that it shows that you've been working with John. So you've both done a good job, and not to put all the onus on John for his hard work and effort with working with you, but it definitely shows. So good job,
Ivan.
Yes,
this is Dave. I wanted to say that you did a really great job. Even though I ran through some stuff with Benjamin when I was at his place, I learned a few things today on the decompression, on what you're talking about. So I appreciate it, and then it sunk home with some of the details I was still questioned on. Your presentation was able to kind of tie everything together. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you, and I appreciate the feedback.
And that's absolutely one of the things you guys will learn. Hearing the same thing from multiple sources and multiple times will absolutely help drive all these concepts home overall. So the more times I say it, the more different ways I say it, the more different people you hear say the same thing, the more it'll drive these concepts home. If you wonder why I got where I'm at, it's because I've heard all these concepts from multiple instructors multiple times. I've read them from multiple different sources. I didn't just one day to take a deco class and, I'm an expert in deco. It didn't work like that. My first deco dives were ugly. I'll be the first to tell you. They were not as pretty as I passed the course. Absolutely. Passed it on the first time and got it. But the difference between where I'm at as a technical diver then versus now is definitely substantially different. And then moving up to technical diver as an instructor, tech diver, it took me to a whole different level as well. And so hearing this stuff over and over and over again, I encourage you guys, this information is perishable. Please, 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 please keep reading the information. Please go to Dan. Dan's got a lot of great stuff on this. It's all free. It's awesome. They do a fantastic job on this as well. By the way, quick shout out on June 12th, I believe. I just want to check on that. We've got Dan Orr, who used to be the president of Dan. I'm going to do a live broadcast with him where you'll be able to, from your social media, type in questions and he will answer them. He's going to do a presentation on mistakes divers do. So it should be a great presentation, but it'll be live on Facebook and YouTube, I believe, as well. I think I'm going to do it on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. So if you have questions, type them in the question box. We'll have a moderator be able to ask questions, and it's kind of a neat. Dan Orr is the diver's diver. So he's pretty cool. So anyway, good job. I believe we have Dustin ready to talk about something today. What are you talking to us today about?
So we're going to go through a little bit of equivalent narcotic depth.
Awesome. Do you have some screen to present?
I got one screen. I'm not very good with computers and PowerPoints and that.
You're fine.
But did you do a wood carving?
Yeah. No.
Dustin, if it helps, I have the equivalent narcotic depth screen up where I could share my screen if you'd like. You're welcome to use mine.
Let me see here. Let's see how that does. Does that bring up the formula page? Nope. I'll stop sharing. Let's try that again. Maybe not.
It's not a problem. Dustin, like I said, I've got here's what I have up. I'll show it to you real quick.
Right. Yep.
Does that help you?
A little bit. So, what is equivalent narcotic depth? Why do we want to know what our narcotic depth equivalent is? How do we calculate our equivalent narcotic depth in the breathing gas? Was it a reasonable equivalent? And who should use this formula? Equivalent narcotic depth formula is a measurement of nitrogen relative to our planned dive, and to adjust so we have less narcotic effect, and it can measure our performance. Thanks to Dalton's law on partial pressure, we can measure the partial pressure of nitrogen just as we do for calculating partial pressure of oxygen. So why do we want to know our narcotic equivalent? So with narcosis, you have slowed performance, reduced ability to think and reason, shortness of memory, inability to focus on tasks. Along with when you get narked, you might park the water, start talking to fish, think you need to share your regulator with the ocean. So with recreational diving, narcosis isn't as much of an issue as it is as we begin our journey down into deeper diving, decompression diving, and go further into trimix as it becomes more relevant. We need to be able to function mentally and physically at greater depths while remaining safe. And this is the narcotic equivalent depth formula. And so when I had a question for you on this, Ben.
Sure. What you got?
Your formula in red has the partial pressure of nitrogen divided by the 79% equivalent minus 1 times
Correct.
10. That gave us an ATA of our equivalent narcotic depth.
Yeah, that's showing you in metric.
Right. So when we went through the formulas on this, is there a way you can, Ben, I sent you a photo. Is there a way you can bring that up on here?
Sure. Let's see.
I texted it to you.
Not a problem. Give me a moment.
Thank you.
Let's see. When did you text it?
Earlier today.
Okay. It'll take me a minute. I've gotten quite a few text messages today. Oh, there it is. Give me a second. There you go. Does that help?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So when I related this to our bear light dive, and you're calculating your equivalent narcotic depth, our altitude 6,000 feet. So when you're doing this and you're planning your dives, you need to take your depth plus your altitude, which gave us 124 feet. If you take a regular air, which is 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen, then that gives you, and your ATA is 4.76. When you apply that to your nitrogen, just like you would the oxygen, you take your absolute atmosphere times your 79%, which gives you 3.76 partial pressure of nitrogen. And the range on the partial pressure of nitrogen is between 3.7 or 2.37 and 3.5. So when you factor in your depth and you do a best gas, your oxygen becomes 29% and your nitrogen is 71%. When you're just looking at the nitrogen, your ATA is 4.76 times your new nitrogen, which gives you a 3.38 partial pressure of nitrogen. So, when you factor that back into your depth, that gives you 108 feet of narcotic depth. So, while everyone is different, generally divers have some narcosis depths, field narcosis at depths of 80 feet, and particularly to colder waters. We can assume most divers will have some level of narcosis at 100 feet of partial pressure, which is 3.16. Nitrogen levels above a partial pressure of 3.95 are unsafe. And the partial pressure at 3.16 would be the equivalent of having one drink. In the end, who should use equivalent narcotic depth? Everyone who wants to manage and understand the level of narcosis. As we deeper and broaden our knowledge of gas planning and gas management, it will become more important. And that's it.
Questions? Do you have questions for anybody? Dustin?
I don't.
Okay, no problem. Well, I want to show you guys something. Because the funny thing is you guys have been, if you're diving nitrox, everybody dives nitrox here, right?
Right.
Okay. You guys have been doing equivalent narcotic depth for a while. You just don't realize it. And I went ahead and, let's see, close that up. Give me a second here, and I'll pull something up because I want you guys to realize you've been Miyagi'd here a little bit. There we go. Everybody see my screen? Let's see, StreamYard. Let's see what you guys. This is the equivalent air depth. Anybody seen this before?
No.
Dustin, have you seen an
Yes.
equivalent air depth table before?
I have not seen this table before. No.
Okay, this is the NOAA one. There should be one for just about every station out there, but this is the equivalent air depth. If you're running nitrox, this is the equivalent to air depth. So if I'm diving to 80 feet and I dive on 28% nitrox, I can dive to 90 feet, and it's the same as an 80-foot air dive. If I dive 35% nitrox to 80 feet, I can dive to 104 feet, and it's equal to an 80-foot dive. So I make sure I get the mouse on the right screen here. So 80-foot dive, and here's all the equivalent depths, right? So if I dive a 37% nitrox blend, according to this table, I can dive to 108 feet, and it'll be equal to an 80-foot air dive. Does that make sense?
Okay.
This is the equivalent air depth table for diving nitrox. Now, we could look at this in a little different way. What we could say is if I dive 116 feet on 35% nitrox, I'm doing equivalent narcotic depth of 90 feet. It's the same table. You can either call it equivalent air depth or equivalent narcotic depth. It depends on which side of the coin you want, but it's the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I got a question. So when it says
Probably.
numbers in gray boxes or exceptional exposure, is that for oxygen toxicity?
Correct. That's when you're getting over 1 point. I would imagine that's over 1.4. This is the first time I've actually seen this particular version of the table, but I would guess that that's 1.4. I'll do the math on it in a little bit, but overall, I just want you guys to realize but since you're not diving trimix, you can do an equivalent narcotic depth by simply using the equivalent air depth table. Just look at it instead of saying equivalent air depth, think about it reverse, equivalent narcotic depth. Same thing. So as we look at this, if I dive 60 feet and I want to dive a 39% nitrox blend, that's equivalent narcotic depth of 40 feet. Okay. Come over here. If I'm diving 34% nitrox at 114 feet, it's equivalent narcotic depth of 90 feet. It's the same thing. It's just a different terminology. Hopefully that makes it a little simpler for you as well. But equivalent air depth and equivalent narcotic depth are the same thing. The challenge is, or the challenge is, the kind of the paradigm that you guys have been used to thinking about has been, what's the limiting factor for me? The partial pressure of nitrogen or oxygen, right? We haven't been thinking about the partial pressure of nitrogen and what that effect is. So as we build and we dive nitrox, we always think of what's the partial limiting factor of nitrox. All we ever think about is just the partial pressure 1.4, 1.6, the toxicity of it. But the thing about it is we can flip that coin, literally flip the coin right over. It's the same coin. And we can say, wait a minute, what's that doing to the nitrox, or the nitrogen in the blend? If I have more oxygen, I have less nitrogen. It's the same thing. I kind of want to throw that out at you guys for a minute, because it really is the same thing. Now, where it gets more complicated, absolutely, is when you start adding trimix and you start reducing that partial pressure of nitrogen again with another substance. That's where it gets a little more confusing. But if you're just diving an air gas table or an air oxygen table, equivalent narcotic depth and equivalent air depth are the same thing. Make sense?
Yes.
It does.
So let me answer this real quick.
So all that being said, I think in his math then he had one of the numbers a little bit flipped, because it looks like the equivalent air depth was a little bit higher than the actual, right?
Yeah. So this is just a quick table I found on. I literally did a Google search while I was thinking of it, because I didn't want to have to open up the SSI app and find the equivalent air depth table within the SSI app. So, but overall, it's looking at it just in a reverse pattern. Like I said, in a what we're typically used to doing within recreational diving is thinking about the limiting factor of the partial pressure of oxygen. But if you take that off the table and start thinking, maybe not take it off the table, that's the wrong term, I apologize. But if you start thinking about what's the other side of the coin, if I'm increasing the oxygen, what am I doing the nitrogen? I'm reducing that. So equivalent air depth and equivalent narcotic depth really become the same thing. So overall, I just want to kind of give you guys the idea of that. Like I said, again, put that in your kind of brain cells and kind of think about it. That our goal now here is we're adding just a different side of the coin. You already have a lot of practice using nitrox and understanding the limiting factor of it. That shouldn't be anything new. If you're diving nitrox, and if you're in this course, you should be diving nitrox. Be nitrox certified, right? Everybody should be nitrox certified. If you're not nitrox certified, we have to have a conversation, because that's a prerequisite of this course. But
yeah, I am.
Yeah, everybody should be. If you're in this class, you should be, absolutely. So just the point is at this point, you've got an idea and a pretty good understanding of oxygen toxicity and pulmonary oxygen toxicity as well, right? Because that's what we deal with. That's when we dive nitrox that we're dealing with. But now we're going a little deeper. We're taking that same idea and we're just flipping it on the other side and saying, okay, I'm used to looking at this half of it. I just need to look at this half of it. I'm looking at the narcotic depth now. Does that make sense, guys? Nitrogen glucosis becomes a much scarier thing. So, all right, well, let's jump into it real quick. Good job, guys. Dustin, I feel like you got a better handle on equivalent narcotic depth. The end, I'm not sure I like the acronym for that, but it is what it is, I guess. I think they could have come up with a better acronym, but I'm not clever on acronyms, so I'm going to leave it there. All right, let's go over to window. I'm going to share that. Share that. Fantastic. All right. Let's continue our cavalcade of values today. All right, we've done our reviews. We've done our presentations. I guess we're not going to hear from Donnie tonight, so no big deal. So overall, one of the things we want to talk about is as we start utilizing and going into technical diving, we're going to start having to be aware of a few extra things. One of the big challenges you see a lot of with technical divers is a lot of technical divers will go to SPGs instead of pods. They do it for a couple of reasons, to be honest with you. The main one, to be honest with you, is an SPG costs about $100. A pod for your computer is $400. So you start having 6 tanks times 400. I mean, that's $2,400 versus 6 tanks times 100. That's 600. So literally, you start getting into a lower cost structure. There's also a baseline reliability on using an SPG that is more. It doesn't have a battery that's going to die on you. So you start getting these big dives, and I can tell you the Perdix does a great job, but the older the Perdix gets, the less it wants to last on that. And so I know on my good old handy dandy Perdix that I love so much that I've had forever, and I've got all these dives on it, the battery is starting to eat batteries a little bit faster. And so I can usually only get 2 days of big tech dives out of it before I start changing the battery. Whereas before it used to be, I'd get 4 days, 5 days of big tech dives out of it. So just be aware it's not got a battery that can go bad on you. The other problem is using pods, just heads up on this, is not only now you have to deal with the battery in your computer, but you also now have the battery in a pod. So you've added 2 additional fail points to your overall management plan that you definitely need to be aware of. So as you're thinking about this and thinking about how you want to plan for your instruments, it's definitely something to consider. I'll be the first to admit that I make sure I put a fresh battery in my computer or that my computer is fully charged before I go diving every single time. I've had that happen. The other key piece of that as well is as a tech diver, 1 is none, 2 is 1. You will not see me do a tech dive without a minimum of 2 computers. I have run 3, but that's kind of ridiculous, to be honest with you. Usually when I'm doing that, it's because I'm just trying to make sure I'm dragging my Garmin along, because it's got a pretty cool little thing where it automatically plugs into my phone and puts it on the web for me, and then I can see it and play with it instantly without having to have to download it. It self downloads. And I also like the GPS function, but that's neither here nor there. So just be aware as we start talking about that. Digital gauges and computers, they give a lot of great information. They get depth gauge. They've got timers on them. They really do a great job of considering the nitrogen factor that you're uptaking into your system. They will definitely take a look at your ascent rate, but there's a couple of limiting factors with using a digital computer that you need to be aware of. They are set not by the pressure factor of an ascent, but by 30 feet per minute. That's how they determine your ascent rate. So that's a limiting factor, right? We've talked about that earlier, that if I'm ascending from 200 feet to 110 feet is about the equivalent of ascending from 110 feet to 70 feet or 60 feet, 65 feet, I think it is. So as you see, the pressure gradation changes quite a bit. The other thing they don't take into account that you need to make sure you're taking into account is cold. As I get cold, I hold on to my nitrogen a lot longer. The nitrogen supplements perfuses into my system a lot faster. So be aware of that. As you're starting to get down deep, you start hitting that 150-foot dive. Yes, you're in the ocean. Yes, the surface temperature in West Palm Beach or Jupiter is going to be 82 degrees, but at 150 feet, it's going to be substantially cooler. Now, you're probably going to be off of Jupiter, you're probably going to be in the 70-degree range. And if you do a 2-hour dive in the 70-degree range, you're definitely going to get cold. And so you need to be aware of that. It's one of the reasons you'll see a lot of technical divers when they're doing these big dives, or especially caves, they wear dry suits all the time. It's not just for their protection, it's for their thermal protection overall. So you need to take that into consideration as you're doing these dives. I can tell you most caves are 72 degrees fresh water with flow, and you spend 4 hours in 72-degree water consistently, you will get cold. So just be aware. The nice thing with using the right computer is it has most computers do, and technical dive computers definitely do, have the ability to program in multiple gases. I believe on the Shearwater you can program in 5 separate gases overall. So you're able to go through, it's either 5 or 6. And I always forget. I've only, the most I've ever done is 4 separate gases. So I've never needed to use that extra gas point. Now I've got me curious. I've got my Perdix out and I'm going to go look at it real quick because I'm super curious. Let's see, select gas. Let's see, next, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 gases. I was right. So it has the ability to monitor up to 5 gases for you overall, which is nice. It's less math for you, makes your life easier. Just be aware that it's not taking into some of the considerations that you need to be aware of through this process. I'm just trying, there we go, turn my stupid computer off so I don't waste that battery. So definitely be aware of that as you go through this process of some of the limiting factors overall of what you have to deal with. Again, making sure that we take into account, we live in Idaho. So we all have that idea that we get cold. When we go to Bear Lake and we hit that 110-foot dive, I would be willing to bet we'll be somewhere between 36 and 39 degrees is what I would guess if I were to put a guess on it. And I'm usually not too far off on that. I was out at Ryrie on Sunday, and at 110, I was at 39 degrees. So be aware of that. And as we well aware on wearing dry suits, you definitely have to be aware that you're dealing with additional buoyancy and those factors at all. If you're diving dry suit, you should be dry suit certified. A few other things to be aware of, lights. Making sure that we have more than one light, especially diving tech in Idaho. We all know that you get below 50 feet and you've gone into a night dive. So making sure you have a primary light designated, a backup light. And then has anybody sat down and actually looked at what the burn time is on their lights? Who's done that?
I have.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Aaron has. Good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, whatever that burn time is, I encourage you strongly to subtract about 40%. Because that'll be a more accurate actual burn time based on the manufacturer. So as you look at that, about 60% of which they say it'll do is what you should plan for. The other thing to be aware of is you get that light in the cold water, and it will definitely help start killing that battery a little bit. Some other things we want to take into consideration, cutting devices. You want to make sure you have more than one cutting device and that you can reach a cutting device with each hand. If something gets tangled up, you want to be able to go all 127 hours on it and cut it out, right? Just kidding. Don't cut your arm off. Wait for your buddy. You also want to make sure you have reels and spools. I can tell you for personal experience, it's not hard for a spool to get all tangled up and pull out of your hand, and you have to get rid of it. Have a spare. Fun story for you. I was doing one of my first tech dives with Nikki, and we were in a heavy current. They dumped Lake Okeechobee. That's a fun word to say. Okeechobee out, and we were down to about 45 feet of viz, 40 feet of viz, 50 feet of viz, somewhere in there. It was pretty bad. We were about 150 feet and in a pretty heavy current. It was about a 4-knot current. Well, before we jumped off the boat, Nikki and I both had deco bottles and we were slinging twins. The tech instructor came to me and said, "Hey, I always keep my spare SMB on my pony bottle or on my deco bottle." And I thought, well, okay, well, you're the instructor. You got what, 10,000 dives? I'm willing to try that. And so I slapped my my second SMB and reel or spool on my deco bottle. Well, we were doing drills, which good news is you're just going to get a chance to do these drills as well, where we swapped deco bottles, Nikki and I. Well, shortly after we swapped deco bottles, he went ahead and noticed that our run time had gone long, and it was time to go ahead and launch the SMB and head up to our first deco stop, which was at 90 feet. I went ahead and grabbed my spool out, filled up my SMB, sent it to the surface, and about, 30 feet into it, there was a pretty good sized tangle on my spool, and it started yanking me and pulling me to the surface. I couldn't get rid of it. My fingers had got stuck in the spool. I got them pretty good in there, and I couldn't get it out really easily. And it pulled me about 40 feet up and about 40 feet farther ahead of Nikki and John. I think it was John. Anyway, Nikki and John. So what I did is I reached over, I cut the line real quick, and let the thing go. And I put my my spool back in my pocket. But the problem is there was a point where the current split. It went 90 degrees and went straight. Well, of course, I went straight, and John and Nikki went to the left. So I was completely without a dive buddy, and I was on my own. We were in a pretty good size area, and I really needed to launch an SMB for the boat. So luckily I had two, right? I reached down to my deco bottle where the instructor had said, put it, and realized that Nikki had my deco bottle. I had no SMB. So what I was like, okay, this is not good. So luckily I was about 100 feet, 95 feet. I paddled along as I thought about what I was going to do and what it would be like to be lost at sea like Gilligan. But I lucked out and I came across a rebreather diver that was actually screwing around from our boat. And went ahead and explained to them that I was at Deco. By the way, Deco, we need to make sure that you guys understand the hands and arm signals. So let me get over here. Where's my mouse? Give me a second here. There we go. And I gave him it's time, I'm at Deco. The pinky there, that means Deco. That's your question. That's the sign for Deco, right? It's not, you're not drinking tea. That's your Deco sign, right? So I gave him the sign that I'm going to Deco at 90 feet. And he said, okay, good. And he told me to launch your SMB. Give me the launch SMB. And I'm like, no, no SMB. And he's like, what? He says, well, second SMB. I was like, nope, gone. And he's like, okay. And so I pointed to him and told him, will you launch your SMB? And he's luckily he launched his SMB, and I was pretty glad because the boat was pretty far away. Good news is, pro tip for you for the day, on your SMB, in about 4-inch letters with a black marker in big letters, write your first name and your phone number on your SMB. Because when you lose it, at some point, everybody loses an SMB, I think, it will come back to you more easily if your number is on it in big letters. So fun story for you. The big pro tip for the day is don't change stuff and your muscle placement of your gear on the dive boat. Whatever you've been doing in the pool, whatever you've been practicing with, do that on the boat, no matter what somebody else says. I don't care if they're an instructor. I don't care if it's Jesus Christ Superstar. Do it the way you've been training to do it. So that's the first line. Second one is make sure you have a cutting device very close as well. And consider having a third SMB. It's not a bad idea. Some other things that you guys want to make sure you guys have with you, a good SMB. I like to make sure you have a bottom slit SMB. As you all know, I teach don't take your regulator in your mouth, open the bottom slit and just breathe, exhale your normal gas and fill your SMB that way. Slates and wet notes. You should all have slates. When you're in tech diving, nobody has the bandwidth to remember all their dive plans. I mean, I'm even as smart as John is, he won't remember every piece of every dive plan. Write them down. One of the pro tips we have for you for the day is get you a nice roll of light colored duct tape. I use hot yellow. My wife uses hot pink. That's how we differentiate our slates. Take that piece of duct tape, put it on top of your slate, and then write your dive plan on the duct tape. When you get done, you just pull the duct tape off and throw it away, and you don't have to scrub that. Anybody had to scrub a slate before to clean it off? Aaron?
I have.
You're muted.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's a freaking nightmare. Why do it? Use duct tape. It's just a nice pro tip for you.
Pro
It actually works pretty good on that.
Dry erase isn't bad either.
Pro tip I use a Mr. Clean eraser thing.
Yeah,
It comes right off.
I'll tell you what, David. I will race you. You use your Mr. Clean, and I'll rip the duct tape off. And we'll see who gets
No,
done.
I don't have a slate. I went to wet notes.
Whatever works for you, you can certainly do that. But wet note slates, I use, like I said, I just use a piece of duct tape over it. It makes it really nice. You just rip it off. There's no erasing to do. You just, you Michael Jordan that crap. So definitely get into that.
Just something I saw. One of my buddies who's a cave diver actually bought those Right in the Rain notebooks to do his cave stops and everything and write down where his cookies and stuff were. And then he just tear the page out and keep it in his stuff. So
Yeah, that's what I have.
That's what I use.
Yep. That's certainly one way to do it as well. There's definitely a lot of ways to do this. I like the duct tape. Once it's done, it's done. I can throw it away very easily. And I write on it with marker. But you can certainly they make all kinds of these nice little books with pencils in it. You can write in them. And I still, even in this, I still take a piece of duct tape and I put it on the page itself. And then once I put it on the page, then I can just rip it off the page as well. Other cool things you guys can do if you really want to get slick. They make something called TerraSlate. So this is my instructor notes that I bring with us with everything that I need to try and remember. There we go. For our dives. And it's called TerraSlate. It's about $30 for 100 sheets, I think. So other
That's
things
cool.
you do. Other cool things, you want to make sure you have a compass. As dumb as it is, take your compass reading before you go down. Make sure you have your compass. If you're going to be down for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, Nikki will tell you that I use my compass every freaking dive. And if Nikki was here, I'm sure she'd tell you, "Hey, Nikki, are you here? Come here." Use your compass every single time, but take that heading in and keep an eye on your compass, which way you go, how far out you're going, how long you're down. Keep an eye on it. Your compass is definitely your best friend.
How well does the Garmin track underwater for compass?
It doesn't. The GPS does not work underwater.
It doesn't have any directional ability underwater at all.
Oh, it has directional. It has a
Does
compass.
work okay.
It has a compass, but the GPS doesn't work.
That's what I was asking. If it had a compass.
Yes, it does.
Mine should arrive to my house, so I havenent had a chance to play with it yet.
Like any digital compass, there is a bit of drift back and forth, but it does pretty good.
There you go. It looks like that.
Okay.
It's nice. The cool thing with the Garmin, if you're a Garmin user, let's see, is it right set up? There we go. There we go. It's a double tap to get to the next screen. There's gas. There's time. NDL. Temperature. Yeah. I've got
mine should show up tomorrow in the mail, so I'll have a little time to play with it before Bear Lake. But
there you go. It's good. I like them quite a bit. Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move into that. Let's look at what a deco was actually going to look like on your computer. I just happen to have a video with 3 computers. So I'm going to turn the sound down because you don't need to hear the sound on that. Let's see. Present. Share screen. I want you guys to see what it looks like because I don't want you guys stressing on me. All right, let's maximize that bad boy. There we go. So this is the 3 computers that I use. The right one is the DSX. The middle one is the Garmin. The left one is the Shearwater. I apologize. I'm getting a better thing to be able to record it, so I'll be able to record the whole thing. The camera moved up on this. But you can see where real quickly, we have dive time, 11 minutes, 13 minutes left at NDL, right? 7 minutes here of time, 14 minutes of NDL. And here's the time of 70 feet, 15 minutes to NDL. Let's get a little farther down the road. Down to 2 minutes of NDL. 3 minutes NDL, 3 minutes of NDL. 0 minutes of NDL. It will tell you 0 minutes, 13 minutes of dive time, 0 minutes of NDL, 0 minutes of NDL. And now we're just about there. In fact, we'll just play it. Put the compass up for a minute. There's me tapping it out. And the Garmin, or not the Garmin, but the the Garmin went to NDL first, or it passed NDL first. It said 20 feet, and it uses a second up timer of where we're at, and that's the ceiling that you see right there. The DSX is close. The interesting thing, and the reason these 3 are different, is what I discovered. It was fun to do these side by side. Is I don't know if you can see the depth on each one of these, but the depth on the Shearwater says 96. The depth on the DSX says 100, and the Garmin was at a different, was somewhere between them. It was at 98 here, 96, and 99. And so when you start putting a variance in based upon depth, you're going to get a variance of your NDL and your deco time as well. My theory on this, I don't have proof on this, is that The reason they had different NDL or different deco times and different times or depths on it is that the pressure sensors are not military grade. This is a consumer-based product that's designed to be with a fail factor or a variance factor of probably 3 or 4%. And truthfully, they're all probably about 2 to 4% in that area. But that's the big thing to look at is you can see the DSX is at 99 feet. The Shearwater is at 96. And the Garmin is at 98 feet. So the pressure sensors are really close. But remember, this is not like hardcore science, right? But that gives you an idea. We're getting at 0. So we've got our time, our ceiling point, and time on the Garmin. Getting ready to pass the, there we go. Oh. There we go, finally. The DSX just popped into Deco, and what it did is it came up with Deco stops, 20-foot ceiling for 3 minutes. That's what it looks like. And as you can see on the right-hand side, my gradient factor is at that point. It's telling you, dude, you're in gradient, right? The Shearwater has not cracked into Deco just yet. It should do it here just in a second. I sped this video up too, by the way, in case you're wondering why it's going so fast. Come on. There it goes. So here now the Garmin has popped into Deco as well. So it put a ceiling of 20 feet for the stop and 1 minute of ceiling time. Does that make sense, guys? That's what it's going to look like.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. I don't want this to be a big surprise when you see this. This is no need to panic. All it means is that you really, what it's telling you, right-hand one's telling you that you need to do an extra 3 minutes of safety stop at this current depth. If this scares you, it's time to go ahead and start an ascent. Make sure you have the gas appropriate. On this, you might take a look. I have 2,300 pounds of gas left. I think I've got enough to do a 1 minute deco and a 5 minute safety stop. So watch your gas. Be aware of that. As we got a little farther into it, here's what it looked like. We're starting to come up. We're at going across the Great Plains. Got up to a deco of 5 minutes on the DSX. I'm at 2 minutes of time on the Shearwater, and I can't see how much time is on the Garmin. 6 minutes of deco, 2 minutes of time. "66 feet. We're getting shallower. Now you can see we're at 4 minutes of deco because I'm starting to come shallower. And that's one of the things to be aware of. And if you get into a situation, if you rise 10 feet, usually that'll give you 4 or 5 minutes of extra time or whatever you need. You're going to be reduced as you start your ascent. You're going to be reducing your gradient factor as you ascend. If you do a gradual ascent, you're going to be reducing that time. And a lot of times you'll see a max, if you stay out there, of 5 minutes. I haven't even hit my ceiling point now, and it's already gone down from 7 minutes to 4 minutes of ceiling time. The Garmin's still counting up to, and it's at 3 minutes. The Garmin tells us, hey, you're approaching your deco stop. Slow down. We're at 30 feet. 20 feet for 3 minutes. 20 feet for 6 minutes is what this is saying. I'm at 30 feet. 5 minutes. You see it goes down very quickly. There's 2 minutes of ceiling time, 2 minutes of ceiling time. I can't tell what the Garmin's saying, or yeah, the Garmin's saying. But I stopped at 30 feet. Now we're at 20 feet for 1 minute. 20 feet for 1 minute. No big deal. 20 feet for 1 minute. Now it wants me to, I finished up the deco stop on the DSX. And it wanted me to go up to 10 feet for 1 minute. Now, one of the things I did do for you guys is I did pop above my ceiling just for a second. I wanted you to see what it looked like. There you go. Stop. Getting this to stop at the exact point where I wanted to stop is tricky. Come on. There we go. So on the left, you can notice on the Perdix, I went ahead and I violated my deco ceiling. I'm at 19 feet. The ceiling is 20 feet. it goes to yellow to say, hey, wait a minute, you're too high in the water column. You need to descend. That's what it's trying to tell you right there. So just a second or two later, I went ahead and descended below that. Went up 70 feet, 18 feet, 20 feet. There we go. Back down to 20 feet. 1 minute left on my deco time. On the left-hand one, I have cleared my deco on the what do you call it? On the Garmin. Sorry, brain's kicking off. And the DSX, I've cleared deco time as well. Now, once I cleared deco on the Shearwater, here's what it does. The Shearwater goes into a clear counter time for you, and it'll let you see and say, okay, how long do you want to be clear? And it's telling you specifically, here, you get to choose. I'm going to encourage you to do a 5-minute safety stop, 1 minute, 20 feet, 4 minutes at 10 feet. Currently, I had the DSX set to a 10-foot safety stop. I have since changed that, by the way, but you can see I spent my clear time. I'm at 21 feet. You can see how fast that's going. Did my minute at 20 feet. And spent a little extra time just to make sure I was good to go. Plus, I wanted to get some good video of this. But that's what it's going to look like. Does that make things a little clearer and easier for you guys? Does it help to see it?
Yes. I have a question on the Purdic, since that's what I have. Once you do because I see it says clear and then the time. So you're just doing your safety stop and it just say, okay, you've been clear for so long.
Yep.
Okay.
And what it'll do is it'll count the time that you're in a safety stop range. That number will never stop until you surface.
Okay.
Or go below 20 feet. If you go below 20 feet, it'll stop. If you go to zero to above the surface, it'll stop. But as long as you're in safety stop range, that counter will continue to timer through.
Okay.
Now, if you go below 20 feet and stay there for more than several minutes, it'll reset the clear timer. I believe it's 2 or 3 minutes that it takes to reset the clear timer.
That's good to know.
Easy enough. Now, as you start looking at your log, here's what the 3 most popular logs will look like for you on a deco. The left is the Shearwater. And what it does is on your time, it'll tell you exactly where in the process where you went into your deco. I was right about here, and when it said I was in full deco. The red line is the ceiling. And what you'll see is as you do a bigger ceiling with the Shearwater, it'll give you stair-stepped ceilings. But that's all deco right there. And then you can see right there is where I violated my decompression ceiling. With the Garmin, this is what it looks like. It puts the red bar up and it gives you, that's my deco ceiling. Being that the Garmin showed a lower depth, a shallower depth, we didn't get as much deco out of it, but this is all the time that I was in considered deco. And then finally the DSX, this is for pretty much all Aqualung products. This is what it'll look like overall. It'll tell you when you went into deco and it reds out, but it doesn't give you your ceiling point. So that's what they look like. That's the process. I figured it would be helpful if you guys actually got to see what it looked like. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Because that's definitely a big stressor for a lot of guys is they see that deco for the first time. They're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. You're not going to die. Just go slowly. Do what your computer says. My favorite time on a boat, I was in a boat in November on a recreational boat, and the little girl across the deck from me said, this is my 9th dive. And she was so excited. And as she came back up from her first dive, she says, she looked at me because she figured out I was an instructor. And she said, now my computer was beeping at me and vibrating and telling me to go up. What should I do? I swear to God, you can't make this stuff up.
Go up.
Yeah, I know, right? And so I had a heart-to-heart with her. Nikki says my head about spun off when she said that. I had to cool down for a minute.
Did you get the bends or anything?
No. She was diving nitrox and her computer was set to air, but she was very confused on whether she should follow her computer or not.
Oh, okay.
All righty. let's go over and I've got a quick quiz for us. Let's see. Stop screen share. Sorry, I'm fading for a minute. I didn't sleep last night. Sorry about that, guys.
I didn't get to sleep much either. Aaron's presentation got me really thinking last night.
Bryce, what's the answer here?
During the dive, planning pressing what tasks will be, what depths will be reached, and I'm going to say all answers are correct. C.
Absolutely. As we go through things, we're going to make sure we want to know what each person in the dive is responsible for. Dustin, what do you think? You should know this one. We talked about this.
Sorry, my mic was off. Use optimized nitrogen instead of air.
Yes, absolutely. Simple enough. All righty. Let's go into our dive planning. Let's do some dive planning here. Let's see. So our first dive plan is going to look something like this. What we've done is we popped this in. And let's see. And we've forgotten a couple things. I've forgotten two things on this. This is not an actual dive plan. This is just a sample of what it looks like. Dave, what have I forgotten to do on this plan that's going to be pretty important?
Let me analyze it really quick. I'm not seeing it. Oh, altitude. Yeah, there it is.
Absolutely. Make sure you set the altitude. It's pretty important to make sure we do that correctly. There's another thing. Make sure your sac rate is set correctly, even though we're not going to use this for sac rate. Make sure you set as much correctly and we get as much detail as we possibly can in here. So be aware. Look at all the factors involved, what we're going to do and what that looks like. So here's what's required for you guys for your simulated decompression dives and decompression dives we're going to do. I'm going to require that you have an SMB. I would prefer you guys have two. You guys need to have at least one reel or spool. Two is preferred. Your minimum length is going to be 150 feet. Aaron, why do I need 150 feet?
If there's any current, it could push us further away from it to get to the surface.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys will need at least one good deco bottle. Two is going to be easier for you. Proper exposure attire. Your bottom gas, I accept 21 to 40%, but we're going to run our air table on this. Your deco gas maximum is going to be 40%. Dive computer needs to be capable of a technical mode with a gradient factor. I would prefer you guys have two, but if you only have one, I understand. $1,000 dive computer is a definitely expensive thing to do. Cutting tool, two is preferred, reachable by either hand. You are required to have a spare mask. Your primary tank needs to be at least 72 cubic feet. Minimum 80 is better. Deco size tanks, 30 cubic feet. And that's from the standards. I prefer 40s, but I'll be bringing 130 and 140. Day one gas. I'm anticipating you guys needing 38 or 6,800 liters of gas. So let's talk about our first dive plan. Has everybody got their dive computers ready? Or their dive planners ready?
I do not have mine on this computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can follow along.
Okay.
For sure.
I'm gonna launch mine as well on another screen. Let's see. Take me a second here. There we go. So the first thing we want to do, give me a second. I'm going to actually launch my dive planning software. Take me just a second here. Let's see. I had it launched. I just got to get the plan dive here. Share screen, present, share screen, window, entire screen. There we go. All righty. So here's our dive planning software. So what do we need to do first, gentlemen?
You need to put in the altitude, add a deco bottle.
Okay. We're going to start without a deco bottle because I want to show you guys some quick stuff here as well. So 6,000 feet, 801 millibar. I also want you guys to work with me on the gradient factor. We're going to be doing a 25-50, which is a very, 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 very stupid conservative safety. I've gone ahead and set it to 15 liters like we've talked about as well. All right, let's see. I like this software because it's nice and simple, easy to plan. Our first dive is going to be a 60-foot dive. It's going to, and we want to make sure that we're down at 60 feet for 15 minutes. So 60 feet for 15 minutes. The first thing you'll notice here is, see this line is kind of red-orange? It's giving you a visual warning that, wait a minute, you're descending too quickly. So let's go ahead and slow that up a little bit. We know shore diving, we're going to need to spend a little more time. So I'm going to give us 3 minutes to get out to our 60 feet. Plenty of time, right? Now, the first thing you'll notice is we're in tech mode. Anytime it gives you a flat rate in tech mode, that's not a safety stop. That is a deco stop. That's what it's telling you right there, is this is a deco stop. Slow down, dude. This is where you're going to stop. And it also giving you a visual and verbal plan of what it's telling you to do. Descend to 60 feet takes you 3 minutes. Run time is 3 minutes. I'm going to be at 60 feet for 15 minutes. I'm going to leave the bottom at 18 minutes run time. I'm going to, at 18 minutes, I'm going to leave and I'm going to start up to 20 feet. It should take me about a minute to get there, a little bit. And I will get there at the 19-minute runtime mark. I'm going to remain at 20 feet for 4 minutes, and I will leave the bottom at 23 minutes, which means I will hit the surface at the 24-minute mark. Runtime is how far you're into the dive. Duration is how long you stay at each portion. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, if I was just running an 80 cubic foot, and I'm going to put 22 liters in there because I'm running side mount. Let's see. And I run 21% gas, 0 helium. This is our current dive plan. But watch what happens when I suddenly put in 40%. All of a sudden, even with this super conservative plan, if I run an optimal amount of gas at 40%, all of a sudden I take care of all the deco. I've reduced all my nitrogen need, residual nitrogen. I've gone to that. So as we start thinking about this, you can think about what would be the best gas and what's the impact of it? Well, in this case, it's going to save you 6 minutes of time and give you more bottom time, or no safety or no deco stops. So just by switching out the gas, all of a sudden we took out 4 minutes of deco. Bam. So I want you guys to think about that and just play with this and get used to that. Now we're running 21% gas. If we want to add a deco blend, we're just going to hit right here. Throw a 40-liter tank in there at 3,000 PSI, 40% nitrox. I've got the my partial pressure bar set to 1.1 for additional safety, just to force that up. But now we can visually see it says at 20 feet, we're going to switch over to nitrox 40. But did anybody notice what happened with our deco time here? Let's do that again. 21%, 4 minutes of deco versus 2 minutes of deco. So by switching to a 40% blend, we reduced our deco time by 50% in this particular case. Does that make sense, guys? Easy enough? And the other thing we need to do is we need to plan out what does it look like if we do a 10 plus 10. So this is our basic dive plan. So 10 plus 10, what does that look like? Well, let's see. So that's going to be 70. 70, and 25. That's our maximum amount of time. So if we do this as a 10 plus 10, all of a sudden our maximum time out is going to be 48 minutes. Total dive time is 40 minutes. You'll want to take that down, by the way. Our bottom time is going to be 70 feet for 25 minutes plus 1 plus 3. So that's going to be 29 minutes. I'm going to count the ascent time as part of my bottom time. Okay. So at 70 feet, I'm doing 29 minutes. My next stop is going to be 30 feet. The level off point is going to be 2 minutes at 30 feet. I hope you're writing these down. And then 20 feet, I'm going to be 17 minutes at 20 feet. You see how I got there? Who understands why I use 17 instead of 16? David, why? Why did I do that?
Why you use 17 versus 16? I'm not sure.
I'm counting the ascent time as well.
Oh, okay.
So count your ascent time as your lower depth. Now with this, oh crap, I closed that window. Sorry. Let's see. Let me pull up my gas calculator here. So here we go. 70 feet at 0.801 was the theoretical depth. So it gives us a theoretical depth of, we're doing an 84-foot dive. How many minutes did we have at 70 feet total?
29 minutes.
Yep. Now let's look at our gas calculation. When did we switch to nitrox?
At 30 foot.
Okay. So we'll need to know that. So we'll clear out this one, 0, 0, 0. And we'll go down to our second tank, 30 feet. How long are we saying at 30 feet?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Perfect. So 20-minute run time, that puts it at, this doesn't actually change any calculations for you at 31 minutes, 40% nitrox. 20 feet. How long were we staying at 20 feet?
17 minutes.
Okay. That puts it at 48.
Yep.
Okay. As we look at this, we can say our 10 plus 10, 3,000 PSI is going to pull us down to 959 PSI left. That's bringing it pretty close, right? Especially when we're starting to talk about using 2 tanks. We're using 20, we got 22 liters. We've actually got 22.2. Still gives us a little bit more, but not by a ton, right? If we're using 80 cubic foot tanks. Our deco blend on our 10 plus 10 is 3,000. We're only going to use about 138 PSI of gas. So we should have plenty of deco gas left, right? Because we're actually going down to 2,000 PSI. So we're using a total of 900. So we'll say 900 PSI for even numbers of gas on our deco. So we got plenty of deco left. This is our max contingency plan. You guys see why we might want to plan our max contingency first instead of planning our primary? What had happened if this plan had been for 45 minutes? What if 10 minutes extra had taken us to 45 minutes? Should we have done this dive, or should we make our actual dive more conservative?
Actual dive more conservative because you're in the negatives now.
Absolutely. If the shit hits the fan and goes sideways. Now, in actual deco planning, you're going to do one plan with 5 feet deeper, and your next plan is going to be 5 feet deeper and 5 minutes longer. I did 10 plus 10 just to give you guys the assurance and making sure you guys would run out of deco time. So typically it's going to be 5 feet deeper and 5 minutes longer. So your first one's going to be just 5 feet deeper. Your second one's going to be 5 feet deeper and 5 minutes longer. But so that's a typical in actual deco planning is 5 feet deeper and then 5 feet deeper and 5 minutes longer. 10 minutes and 10 feet is a lot of irresponsibility on your part. That you're going if you're going that far outside of your dive plan, you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, right? But I wanted you guys to get a good idea as you looked at this. That you guys would run out of dive plan very quickly. That makes sense? So let's go back over and look at our plans. Who's got their computer up and wants to run the next plan?
So just before we do that, where do you put in the tank sizes in your spreadsheet?
Cool. That's a good question. I just wish you'd caught me just a little faster. There we go. It go right here. And so you only fill out the green. So this is tank 1. So obviously tank 1 would be for if you do a side mount. All dive planners work about the same where they don't really understand side mount. So I add the 2 tanks together for the total liter size.
Where the cell was.
Yep. So that's what that's the 22 liters there, John, because you and I both know that an 80 cubic foot tank is 11.1 usually. But in side mount, if we're running 2 tanks, double it. You can double one of the numbers, but don't double both the numbers because that'll screw your way up. Just saying.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. What could go wrong? But that's where that goes. And then you also have over here your NOAA limits. And so the NOAA limits are not automatic. You have to actually plug those in. So as we look at this, we're running a 0.747. So that would put us at 0.8. Our NOAA limit on this particular one was 450. Was that correct? Yeah, 450. Our daily limit is 450 magically enough. And our O2 units are 0.8. So there you go. So it'll figure that out, but you have to put it in manually. But yeah, you only fill out anything in light green. Everything else is calculation. Nice thing is you can also go down over here and you can take a look at it and it'll tell you here's your bottom sac rate, your PSI per minute, your depth factor. It'll give you quite a bit of information, that's for sure. Overall, your total liters required, everything will be in here that you need. So easy enough. Let's do some planning. I will send out the correct spreadsheet tomorrow, by the way, if that's okay with everybody. I meant to send it out last night. I just didn't. Oh, let's see. So here's the corrected dive plans. Dive 1. Your initial dive is going to be 60 feet with a total dive time of 22 minutes. Bottom time is going to be 15 minutes, 3 minutes to get there. On dive 1, we're going to practice and we're going to do a bubble check. We should be doing a bubble check every single dive. Out of gas diver. I'm going to have you guys do that drill. You're going to do an S drill, SMB deployment, gas switch, hover, and trim. I'm going to be looking at throughout the whole dive. You're going to run a decompression simulation, and you're going to have a primary mask failure. Now, this dive is NDL compliant. If something happens, you can go to the surface. You will not actually, on day 1, actually be switching over to your deco blend. Everything look pretty straightforward? Perfect. Does anybody want to copy this down or just wait for the PDF tomorrow? By the way, please delete your PDFs. Yeah, definitely make your life a little easier. Let's see. All right. Day 1 is going to be 22 minutes of downtime. Sac rate 15 liters per minute. Work factor 2. You're going to need 2,001. You should need about 2,107 liters. Now, I'm hoping that all of you guys are not gas hogs and needing actual 15 liters per minute, because that is actually for a novice diver. That's a pretty average sac rate. For a good diver, that is not a good sac rate. I'm going to let you guys look over this for just a minute. I'm going to step away for just a moment and let you guys discuss. Thank you, gentlemen. I've returned. What did we come up with? It was awfully quiet while I was gone.
I was just trying to figure out the subsurface, and I finally was able to get it looking correctly.
Okay.
But I have it up and going for dive 2, day 1.
Gotcha. There you go. So dive 2, day 1. So now, does it make sense? I told you guys initially that I want you guys to figure out 10 plus 10. The only reason I wanted you to do that is I wanted to guarantee that you guys were going to run out of gas on a oh shit moment on at least a few of these dives, and get a bigger, if I overdo it a little bit, you guys see a bigger result, right? I want you guys to see a bigger result. On an actual dive, you're going to do a dive with a +5 depth, and then a +5 depth and a +5 time. And again, if you're going 10 feet deeper and 10 feet longer than you're supposed to be doing, you don't need to be tech diving, because you're not doing what you should be doing. Stay with your dive plan. Now, I will tell you on lighter decos where you're doing maybe 20, 30 minutes of deco, there's a lot of guys out there that will not do an actual dive plan. They'll just run computer models. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a really wise way to do things. But if you do it long enough, you can certainly keep an eye on. You'll know what you're looking at in terms of gas management. It's just those who don't plan for contingency are asking for problems. So is this dive doable at a 10 plus 10 is my first question.
Let's see here. No. It's not with a 10 plus 10.
How so?
I'm looking at, I think we're going to run out of, we will be, I'm getting a warning that says it's more gas than available in the specific cylinders. So we'd run out of gas we'd run out of gas.
Well, let's take a look at it. I'm going to present my other screen real quick.
On the 10 plus 10.
Everybody agree on that or no?
It looked okay to me.
I would say it's okay, but here's what I'm looking at. 6,000 foot elevation, 80 cubic foot tank times 2 for 22 liters of gas. We can even do 22.2 if you really want to get super accurate. And a 5.5 liter tank. It was originally an 80 foot dive. So we took it to 90 feet, 3 minutes of duration to descend, 90 feet. Here we go. 90 feet of our bottom time and 20 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Gave us 23 minutes there, gives us a total dive time now of 53 minutes. See that 53 minutes over here? So let's go ahead and write that down. So we're doing 90 feet for how long? 23 minutes? 25 minutes, right? 90 feet for 25 minutes. We're coming up to 40 feet. So 40 feet for how long? 1 minute. 1 minute. We're doing 30 feet for 3 minutes. And then finally, we're at 20 feet for 24 minutes. Is that all correct?
Yep.
728. Yep. Okay. So let's plug that in. So we pop over to our spreadsheet and we're doing 90 feet.
You're not sharing your screen on the spreadsheet.
Oh, stupid. Just kidding. Sorry about that. There we go. 90 feet for how long? 25 minutes? Now, where do we do our gas switch? At 40 feet, right? That's reasonably important because we're going to be switching tanks. So at 90 feet, we spent time, we were down there for 25 minutes. Okay. Means we're pretty close on gas. 3,000 PSI, 898 PSI left. We're definitely very close on our oh shit plan. 40 feet for 1 minute. 30 feet. Whoop. 30 feet. How long we were at 30 feet, guys?
3 minutes.
Yep. And 20 feet for how long?
24.
Yep. Overall, on a 40 cubic foot tank, a 5.5 liter tank, we're going to use roughly half. So as we look at this, there's a couple things to be aware of is that our equivalent equivalent narcotic depth, our equivalent narcotic depth is starting to creep up there. We would definitely want to stay between 2.4 and 3. 3.5 is the highest we want to get at. So we're definitely closing in on where we should be. But we've got enough gas. We can look at this and say on our 2/3, we're definitely under, but we've got enough gas to be able to handle an oh shit plan here. Just barely, but we've got enough. Now, again, the whole goal was giving you guys a 10 plus 10 was to guarantee you were going to run into some problems. So we can still do this even at 10 plus 10, but if we're only doing a 5 plus 5 on this, we're still good to go. Let's look at our next scenario. We got
What about your safety stop? Always do the safety stop. That's not
you
factored in.
absolutely can. So we're still going to be on there. So we're going to do our safety stop at 20 feet for 1 minute and 10 feet. That's a good thing there. Good job. For 4 minutes. So there's 5 minutes of safety stop at 40% nitrox. You can see we didn't go through a ton of air. That's for sure. 200 PSI. We're still way good to go. But you can absolutely put that in. And you should. But the good news is if you're doing a safety stop at 20 feet, you're not going to be going through very much gas.
No.
Let's look at the Big Daddy dive, though. I'm going to switch back over to our stop screen, present, share screen, window. Let's go to day 3. Or day 2, I mean. Sorry. Day 2. Graduation dive. This is the big Mama Jama dive, right? So our plan was... What was
You
that?
still have a 37-minute runtime in the top heading and 28 minutes in the right-hand side.
Oh, thank you. Good catch. 37 minutes. There you go. Thank you for catching that. I thought I caught them all and fixed them all, but I guess I didn't. Anyway, so 37 minutes runtime. Our goal is, here's our goal right here. We want to do 4-minute descent to 110 feet. And we want a bottom time at 110 feet of 10 minutes. That's the goal of the dive. Everything else is ascent and deco. Make sense? So let's look at it. Present. Stop share. Present. Share screen. Thank you for catching that, Ivan. I appreciate that.
Yep, no worries.
All right. So 110 feet, 4 minutes, 110 feet, 10 minutes. As you can see, we get a little bit of deco with this, right? But what happens if we hit 120 for 20 minutes? That there, gentlemen, is a lot of deco. But let's write it down. So we're at 120 feet for 24 minutes, right? With me so far?
Yep.
We're at 60 feet. And I apologize. We're actually there for 26 minutes. Should have caught that, Ivan. You're good at catching those. 26 minutes, because we've got to make sure we put in that ascent time to 60 feet. So 26 minutes at 60 feet before we go to deco. Deco's starting at 60 feet. So at 60 feet, we're going to be 1 minute. 50 feet, we're going to be at 2 minutes. 40 feet, we're going to be at 4 minutes. 30 feet, we're going to be at 6 minutes. And finally, 20 feet, we're going to be 47 minutes. Anybody notice anything about the deco stops as we ascended in the water column? Nobody noticed anything about that? Aaron, did you notice anything different?
We went 4, 6, and then jumped to 46.
Yeah, it's progressive, and that's what happens with our gradient factor. Is it's definitely precluding. Now, interestingly enough, I just want to throw this in. If we've written all those numbers down, what would happen if we change this over to 28% and 60%? Anybody knows anything cool about that? You went from a long ass dive to a much shorter dive. 21, 40. You go from an 86-minute dive to a 57-minute dive. Is that fairly significant?
Yes.
Just by changing out the blends, best blend. So even if we stayed at the 40%, we're still saving a bunch of time. 86 minutes, 72 minutes. 14 minutes just by doing a best blend for the bottom. But yeah, so I want to show you that, guys. Let's see. Let me reshare my screen. Share screen. Let's do some gas planning. Can we do this dive, guys? What do you think? Who thinks we can do this dive?
Well, I would think we can, since it's one that you planned. But I have not run this through the planner because I don't have access to this right now.
120.
But I will be checking.
For 26. Bless you, bless you, bless you. 6. Our first stop was 60 feet for 1 minute. 50 feet for 2 minutes. 40 feet for 4 minutes. 30 feet for 6 minutes. 20 feet for 47 minutes. Can we do this dive, guys?
No.
No. If you look at it, on our primary gas, we're 255 psi. We are bingo gas. That's not very much. We're well below safety margin. Our deco bottle, we're well below safety margin again. What happened if the shit hits the fan and all of a sudden we have to share gas? We're screwed. We're actually going to be sharing gas with our buddy. So hopefully our buddy had good gas management. So no, on a 10+10, we could not do this dive. The good news is you'll never actually get to a 10+10, or I shouldn't say you won't. You shouldn't get to a 10+10. That means you're being very irresponsible. So if we just did it as a 5 plus 5, let's see, 10 minutes, 15. There we go. All of a sudden, a very significantly different plan. Is that a pretty significantly different plan for 5 plus 5?
Yes.
Can we do this dive? Who's got their planner out where they can do it? So for 115, what's our total time at 115 that we'd use?
19, right?
21, because we want to count that ascent depth to from 50 feet up. So add this one in, John. That ascent right there.
I'm seeing your extended range.
Oh God, I'm sorry about that. Stop screen share. Sorry, I don't know why it doesn't switch that out. That kind of bugs the crap out of me. There we go. Sorry, I did the 5 plus 5 on this. So in this particular case, 115 we went down for 4 minutes. We're at bottom for 15 minutes, and we're going to count the ascent time up to 50 feet as 115 foot. So we'll call it a 21 minute at 115 feet. Make sense?
Yeah.
I'd rather plan conservatively than not. We're going to make our switch at 50 feet on this particular case because we're only running 40%. So in this case, we're at 50 feet for 2 minutes, 40 feet for 2 minutes, 30 feet for 4 minutes, and finally 20 feet for 29 minutes. We'll go over to gas plan real quick. All right, so 115 for how long? I hear a lot of voices.
21.
There you go. 50 feet for how long?
2 minutes.
40 feet for how long?
2 minutes.
30 feet for how long?
4 minutes.
And 20 feet for how long?
28.
Can we do this dive?
No.
Let's go see down there, but I still show you being a little bit close to the margin.
You're definitely close to the margin. Now, granted, this is certainly an oh shit factor, 5 minutes plus 5 minutes, but my encouragement when you start getting this close and you're outside your rule of thirds, that you definitely consider, strongly consider moving that initial dive plan down and making it more conservative. You can do one of two things in this situation, one of three things in this situation. The first one is the simplest of all of them. You can say, well, wait a minute, I'm going to
Instead of a 10-minute dive, I'll do a 9. See how that works.
Yep. There's three things I can do. Let's talk about each one. The first one is I can change my gas blends. What happens if I use a 28%? So instead of a 21, at 21, I'm at 58 minutes. If I change my gas blend to a 28, I've taken 11 minutes off my gas time, my bottom gas time, by changing my gas blend. So that's part one that I can certainly do. Part two, I can look at my deco mix. You guys will be certified to 100% at the end of this class. What happens if I switched over to 60%? I just saved another 8
I think
minutes.
we're looking at the slide and not the
You are
planner.
looking at the slide. Dadgummit. Sorry, I must be getting a little on the tired side. Thank you for calling me on that. There we go. All right, let me go back over to where I was at. So 40%. Okay, so we're looking at this dive plan. As is, we found out that we're very close on this dive plan, right? We're at 58 minutes, and that's very close for an oh shit plan. But if we said, wait a minute, what if I went to a better blend of gas? You should be doing this anyway because it's just going to give you more. So with a better blend of just bottom gas, we saved 11 minutes. So now we're down to 47 minutes. But the good news is at the end of this class, you guys are going to be certified up to 100%. But that's pretty unusual to use your primary blend as 100% because it's a pretty shallow blend. So what if we just went 60%? If we went to 60%, all of a sudden we saved another 7 minutes. So now we're down to 40 minutes of total time. So we saved 11 minutes on our bottom time, and we saved 7 minutes on our deco time. That's pretty significant, isn't it, guys?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So those are the first two things we can do. Then, worst case scenario, we can say, wait a minute, why don't I just back this? I could back this up as well. I took 3 minutes off that. It was 15 minutes. Take 3 minutes off. Is that a fairly significant savings on deco obligation?
Yep.
You went to 31 minutes from 40 minutes. So you saved 9 minutes by coming up 3 minutes earlier. Six minutes by coming up 2 minutes earlier. Are you starting to notice a correlation, by the way? For every additional minute, typically, you're going to gain about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes of deco time for every minute past deco that you hit. Now, that is a sliding or a gradation scale, and it doesn't hold true all the way through to massive deco, but it's not too far off either. For example, and it has to do with depth as well. The deeper you go, the greater that variance goes. But in the range that you guys are talking of being, for about every minute you violate non-decompression limits, expect about 1.5 minutes of deco. It's an easy plan for you configure at 150 to 180 feet. For every minute passed, you're gonna be required for about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes of deco. If you just remember 2 minutes for every violation minute, if something happens, your computer completely dies, you're going to at least have an idea of how long you need to stay at that deco stop. Make sense? So having kind of a basic idea on that is definitely to your advantage. All right. Or is everybody still awake?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just trying to figure out why my planner is always giving me like an extra 30 minutes of deco on top of what you're showing.
Share your screen.
Okay. Okay. And then add me in.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I'm looking at. So I did the 5 plus 5 or 5 by 5. And then I adjusted it just like you have.
All right. 6,008 foot. Let's start with changing your altitude to 6,000 feet.
Oh, there's an 8. Okay, I'll change the 8.
Let's see. Give me a second to match up to yours.
40.
2140. 6. Starting pressure should be 3,000 psi. .1 bar. O2 narcotic. Woman is set. What am I missing here?
That's been my thing. That's why I've been a little bit quiet. I've been trying to figure this out.
fresh water. I'm just starting at the top here. AL 3021. Oh, here we go. 21, 40, 63. No, that's not, I didn't fix it. I get closer though. Deco switch at 150. Why is your deco different than mine? Deco switch at 150. 1.10 bar, 99 feet. Dave, is your narcotic depth set at 98 or 99 feet? I can't tell. The screen resolution is not killing.
I have it at 98 feet, the best mix E&D.
Okay, set it to 99 just to make sure we're all in. John, are you seeing what I'm seeing? I'm not seeing the issue yet.
I've been going for like the other day we started messing with it. I've been going like line by line trying to figure it out.
Okay, so why don't you take the 12-minute time and turn it to 15 and then turn it back to 12? Yeah, sure enough, 63.
I'm missing something.
GF is 2550. You're set at open circuit.
I have Sacra as 0.53.
Oh, 30s, 60.
What am I missing? I'm sure I'm missing something.
What version of subsurface are you on? 5010?
I am on help.
5010, same as me.
Where'd you find that 510 at?
In the dive plan details, subsurface parenthesis 5.0.10.0 is the version. Over to the right.
Oh, right here. Okay,
Right
I
there.
see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, we're on the same version, 5.0, 1.0, 517.23.
And the difference is he's paying all of that price at like the 20
Yeah,
minute stop.
It's giving me 20 feet. I got to be there for 39 minutes.
Do this where it says Wednesday, May 17th, make it Thursday, May 18th. There you go. So it's calculating a repetitive profile based on something else you've already saved, and it's adding deco based on
good
your
catch.
other gas that's been built up.
Okay.
Gotcha. So you must have saved some dive profiles in there. So good job.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Which, by the way, that's how subsurface does repetitive dives. If you're going to dive 3 or 4 of these, you have to plan each of them and set their times out so that it has some concept of the surface interval.
Good. Thank you for catching that, John. I knew I was missing something. The problem is I don't actually calculate my repetitive dives on this. I've never used that function, so I never save my dives in this. I do them one at a time based upon 24-hour increments. So good catch. Okay, that fixed everything. Okay, good.
Yep, that fixed it. That's why I said you asked me the question of, on the last dive, I said I was out of air because it was literally telling me I was out of air.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay.
Right.
Well, that makes perfect sense. So there we go. That's basically how we do it. That is subsurface in a nutshell. You guys have a little energy you want to continue past this a little bit?
I would like to spend a little bit of time with the family if possible.
Okay. We'll plan on Tuesday night, if that works for everybody. 7:00 again?
Yeah.
If you could.
Sure.
Hey, Bryce, are you coming out on this weekend?
So my dry suit got the shipping label for it. It is being delivered on Friday.
Okay. Are you joining us on Saturday?
I can absolutely join you on Saturday. I'll probably drive up on Friday.
Okay. Come find our campsite. Just call me. We should have cell service.
Okay.
Cool. Anybody else joining us this weekend?
I'd like to, but I don't think so.
Oh, that sucks. I have a wife and
I may
kids.
sneak down on Sunday.
Again, Aaron?
What's that? I may be able to sneak down on Sunday. We'll see what happens.
Cool. Yeah, just try and call me before 9 a.m. That's when we'll start
Yeah,
gearing up.
I would know by Saturday afternoon, so I'll leave you a message if I'm coming.
Cool. That'd be great. Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop sharing screens. if you guys could, I'm going to send you the dive plan tomorrow morning, all corrected without all the BS in it as well. So you'll get, so just delete your old PDF. I was trying to prove a point, and I think I did. I would like everybody to have to go through and play with this, and I want you to all email me over. All you need to email me is this right here. Sorry, you can't see my screen. I stopped sharing. Share screen. All I need is this right here. You don't need to screenshot it or anything for me. Just write down this. I need plan 1, day 1, dive 1. Plan 1, plan 2, day 1, dive 1. Plan 3, day 1, dive 1. So I need plan 1 is going to be what you see. Plan 2 is going to be plus 5 feet. Plan 3 is going to be plus 5 feet plus 5 minutes. Fair enough? So that's your homework before Tuesday. If everybody would send me over for all 6 dives written out. And the nice thing is if you type it out, you should be able to copy and paste it and print it out. So when you come out on Memorial Day, you can write it out on a piece on your wet slate, your wet notes, whatever you need. You'll have just print it out and you'll be able to write it out. You won't have to, don't actually have to fit, be complicated. Make this easy for yourselves, but you'll need to write one for each set of dives in our dive planning. But I need a +5 and a +5 +5. That's what I'm looking for. And this dive plan all written out. So please send me a +5 +5 or a +5 and a +5 +5. There we go. Sorry, I'm getting a little loopy.
So then if we're doing 3 dives per day, how
Correct.
much time in between dives are we having?
My plan is a minute. I'd like to do at least an hour.
Okay, so then we do need to calculate sit time in order to deal with the reserve nitrogen that's still built up in the system, right?
I wouldn't worry too much about this because they're all repetitive or they're actual NDL dives, but it would probably be a good idea to do that.
I was going to say,
So right
even if
now-
it's an NDL dive, you still have built up
Yeah.
nitrogen in your system, and you have to know how much that is in order to know if
Yes.
the next dive is
Yes.
still an NDL dive, right?
Yes, you're right, John. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired, but please calculate that out as well.
Okay.
Fair enough. You guys good to go?
As soon as I get the spreadsheet tomorrow, yeah. Or the PDF anyway, yeah.
I'll send. I don't have any way to get it to you as a spreadsheet. It'll just be a PDF, but you should be able to.
Yeah, PDF.
Yeah, you should be able to copy out of it. All right, guys. Just to recap, we went through and did our presentations. Ivan did a fantastic job. He's obviously being coached by John and doing a fantastic job of that. We looked at and we watched and saw what actual deco looks like on an actual computer. That'll pretty much should cover the majority of the computers that are out there. I think most people are using Perdixes. Anybody not using a Perdix? Dustin, you're on a
Right.
I'm running
I'm on a Paragrade.
I'm running a Garmin and a Tarek.
okay, cool. So sounds
I'll
like
be running a Garmin.
cool, excellent. So we talked about that. So everybody's pretty much seen what it looks like to go into Deco on the computer we're going to be using, right? So you've seen what it looks like on Garmin. You've seen what it looks like on Shearwater. It's nothing to be afraid of. As long as you planned accordingly, you're going to be just fine. I don't want anybody freaking out when they see that. Our goal is to go into Deco, but not be scared of it, to understand it. And it's all it is. It just means we need to do a little longer safety stop. So I'm trying to keep you guys from be calm. We did some dive planning tonight to make sure that we had a good understanding of that as well. So that was the big things we covered as well. We did cover a little bit about tanks, I believe, and equipment as well. So we covered a little bit about spools, reels, and we also talked about the idea of redundancy as well. Any questions, guys? Cool. All right. I will see you guys on Tuesday. I'll send out a fresh calendar invite, and the new calendar invite will have a fresh link in it as well.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right.
Thanks.
See you guys Tuesday
See you later.
or Saturday.